I am here with Carrie Rogers-Whitehead, the founder of Digital Respons-Ability. It's taught tens of thousands of parents, teachers, and students around the world how to be safe and responsible online. And she is going to have a casual conversation today here with us, with me, and teach me how to be safe and responsible online. Welcome, Carrie.
Yeah, so adults definitely need this for sure. We're not always the best example, but no, I'm glad to be here, and I like the casual conversations because that's what we got to do with our kids. You don't want to be like, "Hello, child, come sit across my desk and let's have a conversation." It's like you're gotten hauled to the principal's office. So we got to have these conversations for sure.
Exactly. And what I wanted to talk today about is at my house, there is no principal's office, and today is a holiday, but it is a school holiday. It is not a work holiday, which means I am home and I need to achieve some things. I need to carve out some quiet time, during my day. And the only thing that makes my kids quiet for, a big chunk of time is going on devices. That makes me feel conflicted. Like, I do want to give it to them, but does that make me a bad mom? Tell me, Carrie.
Yeah, like don't get on this device while I'm on this device behind the closed door, children. What does that sound like, right? I mean, I think it
Exactly.
also depends on how old the kid is, right? Like how long that they can entertain themselves and what they got to do. So I knew some parents during the doing a lot of remote work, especially when people were locked down. And so one of them told me she made a trail of little toys that were all the way to the door, the office door. And so the toddler had to like stop at each one, and it just it slowed them down a little bit before they knocked at the door. So if you got a really little one, maybe like put a trail of toys slowly down the hall to stop their advance to your fortress.
I
But I
would
mean,
put
so
the
the
trail
little
of
ones are
toys
different.
away from my office door, like as far away as I can.
It's true. Scavenger hunt, and there won't be an ending to it. They'll just go on that. But I mean, like little ones, they're not going to be able to have that type of be able to do that. Maybe you can restrain them in a baby jail slash little carrier thing at a certain age. They're a little more that they can entertain themselves. So I mean, you got the school age ones. So do they have homework on the holiday? What do they have, or nothing? They got sent with nothing for
No, the
you.
teachers are like, "Oh, we want to respect your free time, so no homework." This is actually when I do want them to
That would have
have
been
that homework,
easier
right?
if they had homework for
They
sure.
don't have homework, but they do have devices. They have
Mhm.
educational apps. They have their Roblox. I do put parental controls in, so, they
Yeah.
can't have like a blanket amount of time. But like I will
Yeah.
say, when I say to them, okay, here's your device, you can have it for an hour, like that
Yeah.
rarely works because that hour is so successful. I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh, okay, 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes is 10 more minutes, 15. It grows and grows and
Yeah.
grows because the quiet, the ability to do my work, that is so addictive to me.
Yeah.
But I know then if I let them on too long, when I take them off, they're
Yeah.
grumpy, they're throwing
Yeah.
tantrums, and
Well,
then I have a
and
whole
it
other host of problems.
well, and it's a different spot because like you have made yourself the timer, and when you were interrupted, right? So when we can multitask. We think we can, right? We think we can. But when you were interrupted from your work, it actually takes you longer to get to your work. So in the back of your mind, I'm sure you're like, is the hour up? Is it time? Is it too quiet? And so are you really getting into that deep work? And are you actually being effective? And then you got a situation where they need to be entertained even longer because you didn't even get to do what you needed to do in that deep quality strategy thinking work. So, I mean, I sometimes like, I'll use this. I'm like, can you outsource the screen time and the discipline to somebody else? Because you created this conflict situation between you and the child. And maybe we can get a third party in here that's the neutral third party. And the neutral third party is the timer. The neutral third party is, the app that I love the Carrots&Cake app. That's the neutral third party, or the Nintendo control, parental control. So I think that sometimes in those situations with those timers and what that is, you've created the conflict yourself, right? And now you're the bad guy, and you really want them to self-regulate. So having that third neutral party is sometimes better. And let's be honest here, sometimes kids are better at like dealing with the outsider than they are listening to you because they're safe with you, right? They can be a little bratty.
Absolutely.
They'll
How
listen
many
to
how
that
many people
person.
tell me my kids are like little angels, and I'm like, wait, my
Yeah.
kids? You got my
Yeah.
kids confused with somebody else, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, so I would loosen up on the time anyways, because we're all in this kind of like thing, and then tell them what you're doing because they might not even understand. Like, mom just closed the door on me, and like I'm being ignored. Especially the littles, the really little ones don't always understand what you're doing, and all they see is like, hey, tablets are for fun. Why is mom playing a game and ignoring me? Kind of. So
Right? Yeah,
explaining
never
that,
thought
but
of it
like
that way.
loosening up and having someone else be a little bit of the boss there too. But if you can pregame it, when I say pregame it, like, okay, like what can we fit in for that incentive? Like, can we get them to read a book for half an hour? Can we get them to play outside for half an hour? Can we get them to, like, let's pregame it. And then that's the
Mhm.
reward or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that is a fantastic strategy. And it also touches on something else I've been wondering about.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
when you talk about like these third parties, a lot of the advice I hear is like, okay, have your kids go online. They need these skills. It's
Mm-hmm.
important to have balance,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things. But, parents, you need to monitor them. You need to watch them. You need to know where they're
Mm-hmm.
going, which is like all well and good. I don't want
Yeah.
my kids going to dangerous places. These devices are really adult devices.
Yeah.
But I can't police them. Like, today
Yeah.
I'm home, but
Yeah.
other days, like, I'm at work when they get home from school. Sometimes I go on
Yeah.
business trips. So I can't be like, hovering over their shoulder, checking their URLs all the time. So, like, what do you say about that? Like, how do you achieve balance in like knowing what your kids are doing, but knowing you also
Yeah.
can't be there all the time?
Yeah, and that's a tough one. I'm always a big believer in trust but verify, right? Like, give me a reason to do this. So I actually had this conversation with my kid who's getting older and wants more privacy, and I'm balancing, right, privacy but being parent, because I'm like, okay, I don't want to go through your backpack and your folder and stuff, but we had an incident where we didn't get the field trip permission slip. You had a birthday party that I got the day before the birthday party happened, and then you had a teacher appreciation week, and I didn't get any of those three things. And I was trying to respect your privacy by not going in your backpack. So if you want that privacy, and I want to respect your privacy, I don't want to get in your room and I want to get in your stuff, you have to give me something. We have to meet in the middle somewhere. So I guess, like, where is that middle for the kid? Like, the trust but verify. Like, I gave him a chance. I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna. You need to give me what you need to for school, but I'm not gonna look through it. I'm gonna just trust. But now we got to step back to fix that, right? So whatever that is, the phone. So, here's your trust but verify. I need to know this person, this friend that you're talking to, and I need to have this maybe password to check in. And we just need to make sure that you're following these rules that we came up with. And then if it works, it works. But then there's that there, we have to go back and kind of like adjust if there's an issue, because it depends on the age, of course. The younger ones, I wouldn't. My kid doesn't have a phone, but we're trying to like take these baby steps on this privacy responsibility piece before we get there, and we got a bit
Well,
to
can you
go
can you
because
talk a little bit more about what exactly this trust verify means?
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, they deserve their own privacy and their own friends. And I know I've had parents say like, no, I need to know, and I'm like, well, yes and no. You need to know a lot of things, but do you need to know like every single thing? And shouldn't they have their own privacy, like their own secrets and their own little inner lives and their things that they care about, as they're kind of developing their own little identities and who they are and what they care about? So when I say trust but verify, is you just give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, okay, well, you say that you're going to only be on here an hour, you say that you're going to do this, I'm going to believe you. I'm going to check in once in a while, but that's going to be the situation until something happens, until like you break it. And then we go back to that, I guess. And you agree on whatever that looks like. So we agree with my kid that I'm not going to go through his backpack after school if he gives me all the permission slips. So we had an agreement. And then, you have consequences when it doesn't happen. So now we go through the backpack. I also go through the backpack because there's like lunches and weird stuff and sometimes
Oh my
rocks. I mean, you
gosh.
just never know.
Oh, I know, like half-eaten sandwiches
Always
and
the same thing.
slime that like spills out
It
everywhere
does.
and gets on everything.
Yeah, there's
That's my
reasons.
kid's
But
backpack.
I actually explained it a little bit. I'm like, I'm doing this not because I'm trying to like, get you passing notes or drawing pictures back and forth with friends. I'm not trying to get in your business, but this is the reason why. And now we have to go back to that. And so whatever that looks like for you, whatever those rules, but it gives them an opportunity to, if we don't give them a chance to show they can do it, how can we know they can? I guess. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
that makes a lot of sense. And like bringing that into like the screen time realm, I'm very reluctant to install any of the parental controls on my kids' devices that like the monitoring ones,
Yeah.
which, you know,
Hmm.
are virtually, you know, spyware, you could
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
because I'm so conscientious of not wanting to break that parent-child trust bond. Like I do want them to
Yeah.
know that I trust them. I mean, I do trust them.
Yeah.
What are ways I can talk to my kids, bring up a
Yeah.
conversation where, you know, I kind of feel like in a lot of ways they know more about this whole realm than I do. Like
Yeah.
what are good ways that parents can approach these, you know?
Yeah, and it is hard. And so I think that you're always transparent. If you do decide to do that in your house, just let them know. Don't be like, oh, by the way, you've had a keystroke monitor on your phone for the last 3 years. Shot. I mean, that like destroys like a lot of that trust. And trust takes a long time to build, right? It just takes a second to destroy it. So being cautious about that as well. But I think it goes back to like explaining the whys. And sometimes we're tired, especially if you've had the kids at the house all day and you're just trying to get something done. We launch into our black and
Yeah.
white because I said so mode. But I usually give kids the benefit of the doubt that they can understand it. And when we talk a lot about screen time in our home, it relates to we love to talk and be around you. And when don't you like to be around your friends? And don't you have a good time playing with each other? And we talk about like the positives of like not behind the screens as well. Not like screens are bad, but look at this good over here. And that's kind of how we explain it. And sometimes I'll like say, well, if that person is there, and even I've seen the friends, did you get to talk with her when she was like, asking them the open-ended questions, like how did you feel when your friend was just on the phone all the time when they were at the house? Like how did that feel? And not like I said this said, but letting them make their own observations and talking about the positives over here instead of just the negatives over here.
I mean, I think
Hard.
it's always good to let them draw their own conclusions rather than you
Yeah.
telling them, you know, because
It's
it is like
easier.
when
It's
they
easier,
figure
but
it
it's
out
not effective.
themselves.
Right.
Nobody wants to listen to me in this house. I
Yeah.
can tell you that much.
Hmm. That's true.
Okay, you brought up two good points. I think the first point I'd like to ask you about also coming into like, you know, here it's a holiday. The other way for me to achieve, you know, quiet in my house is to ship my kids off to a play date, you know, get them out of the house, whether that's with a friend, whether that's with relatives. But when you put them in other people's houses, there are other people's rules. And a lot of times they
Yeah.
have very different rules about screen time. How do you
Yeah.
navigate that? Like parents who are just like, turn all the devices on all
Yeah.
day long, TV, video games,
Yeah.
internet, you know, it's a free for
You're
all.
the bad parent then. You're like, well, they did this, right?
Yeah, and I don't want to say, well, these are my rules, and I don't want to
Yeah.
judge another parent. We all
Yeah.
have our, you know, things that we're dealing with. So how do you like, yeah, how do you have that
Yeah.
conversation with another
Well, I
parent or
mean,
family?
I think Meredith, you hit it on the head by not like judging, because what does that say about like these are our rules, and that the implicit judgment is we're better than them or our rules are better, and like having it and just like people have different rules and that's their rules and that's our rules, and that like no judgment, not like the bad or good. It's just they're just different, and I think that's good for kids to know, because every single place they walk into is going to have a different rule. The school has a different rule. After school has a different rule. The movies do. The restaurant does. Grandma does. Aunt does. Friend. Everyone's going to have a different rule on devices. And that could be like kind of confusing. So
Yeah.
if you address it non-judgmentally, like you were saying, is like, that's their rules and that's their right to make those rules. Like you're not trying to like be subversive about it. You don't want your kid going in and breaking someone else. That's disrespectful too. So you're showing non-judgment and disrespect. And then sometimes you have to navigate what that looks like for you. If you decide that it's not time for phone, so we're not there in the phone, maybe possibly a year from now, we're thinking maybe a year, we're moving more into middle school, but we have had to make compromises because we want to have play dates, and a lot of the friends have phones and some don't. So, so I have to tell you a kind of funny story. So last weekend, there is a text on my husband's phone very early in the morning, like 6:45, and it was just a text that says, "Hi," from one of his friends that woke him up because he is the
Mhm.
go-between with the play date situation. So if you decide that that's your rule, and that's fine, that you don't, this is not time for the phone, be prepared for kids texting you early in the morning. Hi, you might get it. waking you up. So we
Oh,
laugh about it, but it was
lovely
like,
alarm
what?
clock, huh?
Yes. But like I say that I call them like kind of training wheels. So maybe that's a watch. Maybe that's, we have here's a tablet. We have a Just Kids app, and we use the apps on the tablet. We have the phone. So we kind of have all these training wheels that are kind of in between, like nothing. But that also means extra work. That means having to getting these things set up. It means having to field. We also had a kid try to rickroll us and send gifts and stuff. So it's just like be prepared for that too. That you might be that person who gets it. But if that's your rule, then that's your rule, and then you can kind of have that conversation about it. So we were like, do you think that was like maybe a thing to send to an adult at that at that time in the morning? Would you want to wake your friends up with the text? There
Oh
too.
man.
Yeah. Be prepared, but we get a laugh.
Or I guess alternatively, your kid could be like, "Hey, all my friends, text my parents at 4 a.m.
Oh my
and then maybe they'll let me get my own
Maybe
device. They'll say
that's
this isn't
true.
worth it."
That's true. I know. So that's where we're at. We coordinate the play dates, and they have the different rules, and at his age, there's my kid's age, there's a wide variety, and you get to those ages when they're get like middle school, high school, they mostly all have them, but there's kind of this age set, like this 8 to 12, roughly. It's all over the place in terms of smartphone adoption and ownership, and so if you decide to wait until like that 12 or 13, then just be prepared that you might need to be the go-between. Might be the go-between.
And like, what's your advice if you do get your child a phone? You have softball practice after school or basketball practice, and you're running around and you have to coordinate things. Do you just like get the phone out of the box and hand it to them? Do you
Oh no.
suggest parental controls on
Might as
these
well give them a puppy
devices?
then. It's the
Yeah.
same equivalent of giving here you go, here's your puppy, good luck. I mean, but yeah, like it goes back to like kind of that trust but verified conversation that you're on the same page there. So, we've done sometimes like signing contracts about like YouTube time or this or whatever. There. So having an agreement, I mean, I have a template I've used on my website and other kind of places that or questions to ask about, and some big ones that people don't even think about. So they're thinking about screen time, they're thinking about safety, but they're not thinking about what happens when it breaks. They're not thinking about charging it. They're not thinking about like the money piece and how much it costs, because that can really add up. And now, okay, so you've given your kid a phone, you didn't have any agreement, the kid loses it or it breaks. Those things happen a lot. Like I remember buying my kid 2 pairs of glasses because it got sat on. You know what I mean? Like it just gets expensive, right? And what are you
Right,
gonna
right. I
do?
remember
Sorry, kid,
throwing
you
my
can't have
retainer
that.
away at lunchtime.
Yeah.
But,
Sorry, kid, can't have black glasses. Sorry, kid, can't have your retainer. Like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna have to like replace it. So along with those conversations about the agreed on screen time, about where you're going to have your phone, like who the financial and fixing piece is a really important conversation to have too. But yeah, wait, having that conversation, talking about it, having the guardrails in there and the agreements there. And if you decide to have parental controls, letting them know this is on your phone and
mhm.
we're going to watch it, and I may at this point look at it, and having them be aware of that is all the time for that conversation, and then revisiting it, not just like you have a performance review at work. You don't just have it once and then you're there for 20 years. You have one maybe every quarter, maybe every an annual review or whatever it is. You check in on
Yeah, keep that flow of communication going.
it.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Here's
yes.
another thing, and you touched on this at the beginning of our conversation. How I always think a really important way to, instill good values and habits in my kids when it comes to screens is modeling good behavior myself.
Yeah.
But then, like with the work, when I have to be on my computer all day because I'm doing calls, because I'm writing papers, all these different things, how do you let them know, like, do as I say, not as I do? How do you
And
balance
this is
that?
a hard one, especially if you have adolescents, because adolescents have a BS meter and they detect adult hypocrisy, and they hone in on that, and they will call you on it because that's just where they're at developmentally too. So I think that that's good that you call it out and not pretend, and if you and just being very open and frank about it, like, hey, I'm on a screen too much too sometimes. I know that I sometimes do this, or this is how I wind down, and I know I need a break. So I know I did this during the holidays. I get like seasonal affective disorder. I need the sun. I get like blahs, and I was
Right.
playing too much of a game. It was too much. It was a little much during some of the holidays. I was just like, didn't want to leave the couch and just wanted to eat cheese and play a game. And so I was like very upfront, like, yeah, I played too much of that game, didn't I? Like, but I think it's that vulnerability. And sometimes adults are afraid of showing that vulnerability. We feel like we have to model strength, but I think that vulnerability is strength, right? Like showing, being humble, learning from your mistakes, expressing that is that strength, and that's modeling what you want them to see. You want them to maybe apologize and own their behavior. You want them to be open about how they can improve and self-reflect. So that to me is modeling it. So I'd be like, yeah, kids, I'm behind this door all day and I wish I could be with you more, but that's kind of how my work is. And know that as soon as I'm done, I'm going to be out there to be with you or whatever it is. Or you can even say this. And sometimes I say this too. You're like, I love my job. I really like what I do. And I want to work a little bit sometimes. So don't like make work always a bad thing, just being
Right.
kind of that open, vulnerable piece of it. Because yeah, you don't want to be like them thinking that you're behind a door like crying or something, but expressing that too. You go crying. Yeah.
That's terrific advice. And I love that the idea of, showing the vulnerability, and that is modeling
Yeah.
also, like all of these, because, they're kids, they watch you like a hawk, don't they? And they
Yeah.
do have that BS
And
meter.
and I find the younger kids are more open about some of those things and maybe our parents or older generations that was just like it was a different style of parenting. I think that sometimes that maybe we feel that we need to adopt that style, but the younger kids are pretty open about their feelings and their emotions. They've been encouraged. They talk about their mental health. They talk about some of these things. And so I know I work a lot with young people, and I have been surprised at how open and vulnerable that they can be compared to I remember when I was growing up too. So I kind of think about the generational shift that I'm seeing too, and being aware of that.
That's really interesting. These have been some great tips. I feel like we can get off this call and I can definitely get a couple hours of work in before we like head off to the park.
No,
But
no,
thank you so
yeah.
much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Carrie.
I appreciate it. It's not easy. That balance is it. The how do I say the balance is like, it's not like it permanently becomes balanced and it stays there forever, right? Balance shifts over time, and you adapt and you change, and that. But the fact that people are here listening, we're all learning, and we're all open and vulnerable about how we're learning and making the mistakes together can help us get it through.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds, as long as everybody is flexible,
Mhm.
forgiving of themselves, because nobody's doing it right all
Yeah.
the time, nobody. Um, then, we'll all get through it together.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate
Yeah, and thank you for joining us. You have a great rest of your day. I hope you
Love
get some
you.
work done.
Thanks.